Good evening. Welcome to the Steel City Huddle podcast. I'm Leanne Lohman, joined as always by Zach Franciscus. And here we are, the ninth week in ordinary times or whatever it is, like 75 days until the first game, which is cool. And I every week that I think, man, what are Zach and I going to talk about this week? I feel like it's a struggle to come up with stuff. And once again, we have got like a pretty packed show. Zach and I have really put like the stopper on doing much Aaron Rodgers talk because, for weeks it was just this constant, like, when is he going to sign? When is he going to sign? But he did an interview on Pat McAfee today, and there's a ton of tidbits from that interview to digest, as well as some other interesting comments we heard from guys like Ramon Foster about unrelated subjects. And then we also are going to continue our positional breakdown today with the Inside Linebackers group. So there's a lot to get to. So yeah, he has Big Poppy says, here we go. We're ready to just kind of get into it. I think to start off, we have to talk about like the big piece of news that kind of came out today, this afternoon, which is that Deshaun Elliott will be staying in the Bird. He signed a contract. I believe it was a 3-year contract with the Steelers to stay. When I checked last, the financial details were not out there yet about that, but that's exciting news. And then the other big piece of news was this, commentary from Aaron Rodgers today during his talk with the Pat McAfee show, and how he is really planning to only stay for 1 year. He made that really kind of clear and plain that he feels like this is his final year. He made a comment of what better way is there to go out than with Mike Tomlin and this great group of guys, this leadership group there, one of the best franchises in the league. And he's just really excited to be in Pittsburgh. And so, I'm kind of digesting that in my mind, thinking about it. And Zach and I were texting, and Trey Essex, who's a former Steelers player, tweeted this out. And he said, to be honest, he's not a fan of Aaron Rodgers announcing that this could be his last season before camp even begins. With that mindset, how will he react when things get inevitably tough? Will he have the intestinal fortitude to fight and persevere, or will he be just like, meh, a few more months left until it's over? Also, it's not like JB, I'm assuming he means Jerome Bettis, who is an established Steelers legend, wasn't asked to carry the team, and had teammates who were vested in sending him out in the highest of notes. I don't get the point of announcing it now at all. No upside, and no doubt will be brought up if there's bad play. He said he did go on to say he does appreciate his honesty. He's not afraid to let folks know how he sees things. He's dealt with more scrutiny than most, even if it's mostly self-inflicted. So, Zach, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about Rodgers announcing it's 1 year? Do you agree with Trey? Do you see it differently?
Well, first of all, I keep getting frustrated because I was really enjoying that everything about Aaron Rodgers annoys me. Look at the drama. And every turn in okay, well, yeah, that makes logical sense. Okay, well, yeah, if that's happened. Okay, well, if that's what's going on behind the scenes, I'm finding myself not on his side, but I'm like, okay, well, everyone just back off a bit then. But the Trey Essex thing, why number one, why put it out there? It doesn't help anything other than trying to get clicks. But it's so confusing from someone who's played as a player. What the situation with Russell Wilson, who just came in, former Super Bowl winner, and Ben Roethlisberger and all that, not knowing, is this going to be 1 year? That takes a lot on the team, and it takes a lot on offense, and not being able to plan for the future. I'm going to use a word I did not think I was going to use about Aaron Rodgers, and he's probably going to use it more throughout the season, but I think it's a really selfless move by him. I think him saying, this is not about me. You have your future. I'm here to finish here, build after me. And no wonder he's taking to Will Howard like he is if he knows this is his last year. So I'm all on board for this. And let's get this out of the way now. I don't want to hear talk halfway through the season about, is it the end of the road, Rodgers? He just made it very, very clear it was.
I do think it'll come up all year. I think Essex is 100% right about that. I think we're going to hear about it constantly as everything and anything happens. Do you know what I mean? The reporters are going to bring it up. But I think even if he hadn't announced it, I still think they're going to bring it up, and they're going to wonder, do you know what I mean? Well, what do you think this means if this was his last season? Do you know what I mean? How do you feel about this, knowing that you might never do this thing again or whatever? So I think it would come up either way. I don't know. I'm curious. The players won't obviously say anything negative about it. But I'm curious when other players from other teams start talking about it, how they feel. Would they want their quarterback to say that or not? Because there's definitely a part of me that feels like, just like coaches usually wait till the season's over to announce that they're not coming back, right? They don't tell their guys the beginning of the year, right? So there is a part of me that kind of thinks like, is that something that's a little bit like, is that silly that you would say it now with, you need to be rallying these guys and, are they going to feel like you're really invested, really in this same stratosphere as them? So I don't know. I can kind of see it from both sides.
Well, I think it's interesting that he brought up Jerome Bettis because I completely disagree with Estes on this. It's like he doesn't remember that year. Jerome Bettis saying this is my last year bolstered the team. It's like, let's bring him home. Then it was in Detroit. It's like, oh, let's bring him home twice.
Yeah.
That was
I think that's what he's saying, though. I think he's saying it's the opposite in that way. Like Bettis was such an integral part of Pittsburgh.
Oh.
When he said it was his last year, the guys were motivated to go do it for him. Do you know what I mean? To get him to this Super Bowl, whereas with Rodgers, he doesn't have that relationship. At least that's how I took it.
No, I can get that. And it doesn't mean I agree. I can see why he would bring up Bettis then, but I don't think I'm going to sound like an old guy on the porch. In the modern NFL, I think it's a bit different. That was a long time ago. That was what, was that 20 years ago? Oh my God. That was 20 years ago. So it's a very different NFL. So you don't have that. You might not have that specific thing anymore. And not a lot of one helmet guys out there. So Aaron Rodgers being Aaron Rodgers has already meant a lot to guys just being there. And apparently he went to multiple barbecues. It wasn't just Mike Tomlin. He was enjoying himself for a couple days.
It sounds like he's out there doing the Russell Wilson. That's kind of interesting. Big Poppy says that he thinks it's poor timing after holding the team hostage most of the offseason. Then to say I'm here for a year, feels, I guess, kind of like a slight.
Well, interestingly enough, and I would 100% agree with you, except that he specifically said again today that it wasn't a hostage thing. In fact, him and Mike Tomlin talked, he said weekly. They talked on a weekly basis. I have
that on our big list here that they were talking every week. And I think that's interesting. So let's kind of transition into some of that talk. He did talk a lot with Pat McAfee about this process of becoming a Steeler and all these kind of, commentary and questions about how he got here and what he thought. And I thought it was interesting. He talked about what it means to be a Steeler. He said to be able to play and follow in the footsteps of Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris, Lynn Swann, Jack Lambert, Mean Joe Green, and all the guys that have played in the 90s and 2000s, Jerome Bettis and Big Ben, all-time greats. Just to be a guy that can put on the same uniform is pretty special for me. And I thought, look, Mark Gaboli tweeted out today that he knows that everybody went into listening, or a lot of fans went into listening to that Rodgers interview, hoping to be able to give him the middle finger, and had to have a really hard time finding much of anything negative to say. And I thought that was such a humble comment from him to talk about, the honor of playing in Pittsburgh, playing against Ben, who he beat in a Super Bowl, or playing on the same team where Ben played, since he beat him in a Super Bowl. I thought that was a pretty humble remark, and I was surprised that he elaborated as much as he did.
That's true, because this is very different from a lot of other last goes. Tom Brady joined Tampa because Tampa was a possible Super Bowl contending team, and then he just Aaron Rodgers is coming here to finish. That's why I believe him, but he's coming here to finish his career in a historic place and pass on to what I'm hoping it means is that he sees something down the line from what's going on in the Steelers and saying, what I can do now will help impact this journey that is happening. I'm hoping, and he used the word journey 9 times.
Right, that could have been a drinking game in that interview. There's a lot of journeying. The other thing he said, and you alluded to it, was about him talking to Mike Tomlin. He said, I had conversations with Mike T every single week. It was really through those conversations that this became a reality. Most people who come to the Steelers talk about one of the reasons being Mike T. I can say that was right at the top. The conversations we had felt like you were talking to an old friend. And, we talked about this when we talked about that, idea of Rodgers like holding the Steelers hostage. And, I maintained all offseason that I feel like they don't look at it that way. Like there must be some conversation that's happening that makes them feel comfortable with this. And I think I shared that my concern is that Rodgers is a little bit of a whack job. So just because he's saying something that makes you feel comfortable now, like, will he maintain that? But obviously Rodgers felt like that conversation was reciprocal.
Oh, 100%. And I know we talked about it before we got on the show, but to me, the bottom line with this specific thing is it comes down to where you believe celebrities have a right to privacy.
Yeah.
Because what Rogers is pretty much saying is, listen, I know I'm a celebrity. I know you all want to know stuff, but the people that need to know it, I talk to. I understand the fans want to know it, but the people who have to know it know. And I'd really like my privacy to deal with this stuff because, and I'm defending the situation, not Aaron Rodgers, because I do not like the defending of Aaron. But if I was in a situation where I had a lot of eyes on me and I was dealing with delicate family situations, I was about to get married, all that kind of stuff, I would want, to the best of my ability, to kind of do it as quietly as I could. Yeah. And that's what he's doing, because he understands the reality of it. When he was talking about the players coming to Malibu to work out, he was saying they better wear suits because there's paparazzi on the beach.
Right.
So he understands that.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I was looking. I had pulled it up. I had it to talk about later in my line, but I was looking for that because he did talk about that, about the way that the media inserts itself into your life, and he said he just feels like they don't have that right to be in his privacy, that it's weird and to him and crazy that they're all in his business. And so I thought that was interesting. And I don't know, we talked about this a little bit. I think that there's like both things can be true. Like it's a weird line. Like when you become a public figure, an actor, a famous musician, an author, a sports figure, a reality TV star, you know what I mean? You do in some ways like hand over some degree of your privacy. It doesn't mean that to me, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily right that your privacy is always invaded, right? Or that they nose into your private life. But I think you have to expect to some degree that they're always going to ask and wonder and wonder what you're doing and then judge you based on that. So whether it's right or wrong, I think that it's still going to happen. And so you just have to know. It's one of the reasons why I've always been such a strong supporter of Mike Tomlin not giving more information than he needs to at press conferences, because all these fans are like, well, he should tell us how he disciplines George Pickens, or he should tell us specifically what this person did. But you don't necessarily have that right. If you did something at work, I don't have the right to know what you did wrong at work, right? Your boss wouldn't broadcast on Twitter what Zach did that got him a demerit at work or something. Like, that's just absurd when you put it in like that fashion. But when you look at somebody like George Pickens, that are Aaron Rodgers, that everybody feels like you have this right to knowledge. And so I do think that at times it crosses over the line. Big Papi added that he should have been spending time with the team as well, with teammates. I'm not sold. I think he will rebrand his image from Jungle Whack Job to NFL Network. And, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I do think that there's a part of that where he went off the deep end a little bit. And maybe he thought things were going to get better for him with the Jets, and it actually got worse. So maybe he's feeling like this is an opportunity with an established and respected team to be able to rebrand himself a little bit. Although he did say today's interview that when he retires, you'll never see him again. So, maybe he's not. Maybe he is planning to run off into the, jungle sunset and do ayahuasca with his new wife, whose name I can't remember, but it ends in an I.
Yeah. Now I will say the thing that went too far, that I just kind of went, okay, everyone needs to calm down, when they were saying because they hadn't seen pictures of him walking with his wife that they compared to the Manti Te'o situation. Right off, I'm like, I got really upset. That went a bit far. But there is something a little strange about Aaron Rodgers talking to millions of people from a national platform saying, I wish people wouldn't wonder about my private life. There's
Right.
just something,
As he
if you're looking.
voluntarily goes on the Pat McAfee show every week and shares things that he probably shouldn't share at times. Big Papi brings up another good point, though, that perhaps it could have helped attract more free agents if he'd signed earlier and, ultimately helped the team. I mean, I think that that's we got DK Metcalf, so I'm not complaining, but I do think that that's an interesting point. Would that have changed, any guys that, kind of behind the scenes we don't know about? Would having Rodgers have helped attract them? Rodgers did also say that another big reason he chose to come to Pittsburgh was because of his relationship with DK Metcalf. He called him still one of the most physically gifted wide receivers who's ever played in the league. He said he's a lead by example guy. He's a big reason I'm in Pittsburgh as well. Conversations that we had and just the kind of person he is. The start of the year, I didn't really know DK as well. He said he's like, I work out at 6 a.m. every day. And I'm like, okay, this guy is disciplined. He has drive. He said, I said, how about 8 o'clock? Because I'm going to have to drive from Malibu to UCLA. And he said, that's fine. He said, he's just a really solid human being, a solid dude who leads by example. So he's excited to work out with him. We'll talk about it in a minute, but he does have plans to bring other guys out to Malibu to work out. So I thought that was interesting. You've got Mike Tomlin, you've got DK Metcalf, right? Start to see these reasons for why Rodgers is kind of interested in coming to Pittsburgh.
Yep, you're starting to see a big difference from last year, where last year it seemed like there was a bunch of individuals who were trying to do stuff, and this year there's a distinct effort to be a team, and I really, really like that. So I'll positive right now, as long as it continues going forward like this right now.
Yeah. Jerry Dulac said that he really feels like, compared to last year, the relationship between Rodgers and Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator, is something that's going to be really, is really shaping up nicely. He said, Arthur's a bright guy. He knows what he's dealing with, and he's told me that he likes Rodgers a great deal. And I think that, if that's really true and they're able to build a relationship. We talked last week about Smith's funny comment about, changing the play calling because, you're not just going to run the ball all the time because you've got Aaron Rodgers coming in. So if that's true, I think, we saw that. It seemed like we saw that relationship disintegrate last year with Russell Wilson.
Oh, 100%. It's the relationships, and there seems to be something a little more genuine. I'm not saying I have any inside knowledge, but last year it just seems like Russell Wilson had like a Mad Lib sort of approach. It was like, well, insert name here as a really, really good drive for football, and insert name here. But Aaron Rodgers come out, you feel like he's actually talked to the guys out there. And Pat McAfee even tried to trip him up a few times because it's what he does, saying, well, isn't it hard not knowing the guys or not being the programmers? Like, I know these guys. I'm in this program. What? Yeah. Like, there was a lot of pushback on, no, I am here because, while I understand what Big Papi said that we want him here earlier, because I don't want to be angry for a whole season, I'm choosing to take him at face value that all of this is what went on. So he didn't have to be here for those 3 days of minicamp. Yeah. He could have afforded not to be.
Because I didn't expect him to be there. So the fact that he was there, I felt like was a little bit better than what I expected. I do wish he'd signed sooner. I think it would have been not nice to have that, know what's coming kind of thing. We talked about that before. But, I was appreciative of the fact, to me, that he showed up for minicamp and didn't book a trip to Egypt or whatever he did when he was with the Jets and didn't show up.
That's true. And this is completely out of left field, but a thought just popped into my head that I thought would be interesting. TJ Watt does not like attention, and there's a lot of attention on TJ Watt. Now, Aaron Rodgers knows he gets a lot of attention and it can handle it. I'm wondering if whether the team or TJ Watt's like, listen, can we just take some heat off of me? And they're like, Aaron, go on McAfee. And he's like, okay. And just distract, because people haven't talked about TJ in a few days.
Yeah, maybe. To tell you, the Steelers media was consumed entirely today by picking apart every word, down to where he put commas and conjunctions on that interview today. The other thing he talked about, and I thought that this was interesting, a lot of interesting stuff about this interview, was talked about wanting to take on a leadership role on this offense. Like I remember hearing in the past when he was with the Jets, he wasn't interested in mentoring. He wasn't interested in being that guy. He was there to do his job and all of those things. But he said today, I really want the mantra of leadership on offense. I'm going to earn it every single day in training camp. That there's some stability I think I can bring, having played in a similar system for a long time and having just played a ton of football. I told the guys in the first team meeting I want to pass on my knowledge. He said, I played 20 years. I want to share those experiences with you guys, with whomever wants to learn offense, defense, team, special teams, whatever it is about life, about football, about the mistakes I've made and how to learn from those on the field and off the field, professional, personal, business, whatever it is. I'm going to pass on everything I've learned to these guys.
I like that a lot. And the biggest thing I like about it is the earn, because that has shades of what it was either Troy Polamalu or Hines Ward that said they went into every training camp with like the same blank jersey or blank helmet and they had to re-earn putting their name on it. I did not think that would matter, but he didn't say I'm going to come and I'm going to be a leader. He said I'm going to come and I'm going to earn the right to be a leader. So there's some recognition that in different ways, from a TJ Watt kind of leadership to a Nick Herbig kind of young leadership to a Cameron Hayward, that he needs to fit into it. And yet again, the opposite of the narrative I heard, even from Mark Caboli, that Aaron Rodgers would get here and this is Rodgers' team. And I'm very glad it's not that case.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like that. It does sound like he's trying hard to be, more humble. Now, look, it's early. We haven't even really started like anything real yet. So there's a lot of time left before I'm going to be comfortable saying like he's a different person in Pittsburgh than he was other places, or this was a great answer for the team. But he did hold a team meeting with the players, kind of held court, it sounds like, with the guys. And Logan Lee talked about that in an interview. He said he came in and gave him a great speech. He said, I think we're bought in for the meantime. He's got a resume that you can't argue with. Like Coach Tomlin always says, we're in the business of winning football games. And I think that bringing him in gives us a great chance to do that. I'm looking forward to being able to work with a 21-year vet. That's crazy. You don't even hear that very often. We're just looking forward to it. We just want to win football games. Whoever helps us get there, we're looking forward to investing in them.
I really like that. I like that you brought up the Jets earlier and how his mindset was different. And I'm wondering if, to use a Pittsburgh Steeler term that everyone can understand, if the Achilles was his Ben's motorcycle accident moment where he's like, I'm not invincible, my career's coming to an end, and he had to shift on the fly. It kind of felt like when he went into New York, he was like, this is my next chapter. We're going to be here for a while. And now he's here in Pittsburgh and it's like, no, this is it. I'm ready. Let's give everything I got to give, and then I'll ride off into the sunset. You'll never hear from me or my unnamed wife ever again.
Right. And, look, hey, maybe Big Papi's right. Maybe this is all about rebranding himself so that he can be, an analyst on TV, or he can do something else. Or maybe, like you said, that was kind of his Achilles heel. Maybe the stuff with the Jets just didn't go the way he wanted it to, and he feels some type of way about it. And he doesn't want to leave the league on that like sour note where he looked like not a good teammate, didn't perform well, and he wants to kind of re-image himself. I don't really care what his reason is, right? Whatever motivates you and gets you up out of bed in the morning. My boss doesn't care why I'm motivated to do a good job every day necessarily, right? As long as I do a good job. And so if he's going to do what he's supposed to do and do the right thing by the team, then I guess that's what really matters. I guess for me, I haven't heard him be as complimentary as he's been or as humble as he's been in a maybe ever. I'm not going to pretend like I've listened to every Aaron Rodgers interview for 20 years, but the ones I've seen, I don't recall this. He also talked today about how well he thinks this offensive line is coming together. And we talked about the offensive line last week a little bit, and I think it's interesting, if he sees these guys kind of taking a step forward. He said they're still a part of whoop, did I get the wrong one? Yeah, I can't find it now. But he was talking about them, and he was talking about the tight ends and just how, incredibly well. He thinks those two units are doing. He talked about Roger Jones specifically taking a big step forward. He talked about Pat Fryermuth and what incredible talent he is, and how he feels like this year those pieces are all going to come together. He said, he said something alluding to like got a lot of second-year players on this offensive line, but he sees them performing beyond their amount of time in the league. So
definitely. They were asked to. I mean, let's be honest, other than Broderick Jones, goodness gracious that our guys step up when they were thrown in the fire. Mason McCormick, especially because we expected Zach Frazier to be a mauler and all that, but goodness. So a lot of really positive things. And all of this keeps coming back to a surprising thing, but a positive thing, that Aaron Rodgers understands that the best chance he has and this team has to be successful is if Aaron Rodgers is not the sole driver of this and he is a part of this. And that's what it sounds like. He's looking around, and maybe that's some weight off his shoulders, because when's the last time in his career he didn't have to be the guy?
Yeah.
So there's the guys here. We have guys who know the Steelers better and have been here longer and can be the guy. You can just be one of the guys, boys, just enjoy, throw a football, have fun. So, my wife was reminding me for Mother's Day, I got me and my mom matching shirts. It's the Steelers walking in Beatles form across the thing.
That's a cool short.
So, just reminded me of that.
Yeah.
So, a lot of positive about that specific thing. And also, I'm noticing, especially in the Triassic thing, goodness, what a difference in generations, because he said A-Rod, and I was like, wait, Alex Rodriguez? Oh, Aaron Rodgers. Okay. I dated myself.
I thought the same thing briefly. The other thing he talked about is this idea about mentoring Will Howard, and once again was insistent that this is something he really wants to do. He said it would be, quote, an incredible achievement if he could help Howard progress during the season. He said he has to be careful not to cross a line. He said, but Howard seems willing to embrace every bit of his tutelage. And Howard said during mini camps that being with Aaron the last couple of days is surreal. He couldn't be a better guy. He's so knowledgeable. Rodgers said,
I like that.
Yeah, me too. Rodgers said that he feels the same way about Howard, just that he has a lot of talent and ability and so if all of that is true, I mean, I think best case scenario for most fans would be to see Will Howard be able to make progress and progress. I don't know if that is next year, but I mean, that would be an ideal situation if that could happen.
It would be. This is, I can't believe I'm about to say this. I'm so excited for preseason.
Yeah.
I'm not even excited for preseason in Madden when I play, but this is a time when we've already said well ahead of time that there's no quarterback competition. We are going to see so much of Will Howard in preseasons. All the Will Howard you're not going to get in 2025 in the regular season. I hope he gets 3 quarters a game. Yeah. I genuinely hope that, because that's going to be really, really exciting. And Aaron Rodgers would not be putting his time and effort into a kid that, number one, didn't have the general potential to be good, but also didn't have the desire and coachability. So all positives for a kid we already love.
Yeah, so, and I think he'll continue to get those opportunities. Rodgers talked too about how he didn't really take reps at mini camp. He stood back on the sideline and he just kind of watched. And he said it gave him a unique opportunity in this new team to kind of see the big picture, you know what I mean? Watch from the overview from the balcony, so to speak, and see everything that was going on and be able to watch those dynamics and kind of see where the leadership on that team is and the relationships among the players. So, I think that it gave a chance for Howard to have some more opportunities for reps. And I expect that to some degree or another, that'll continue.
Oh, 100%. If there's one way that you need to understand Aaron Rodgers' involvement in maybe a lot of training camp in the preseason, he's Chris Boswell when it comes to practicing, which means he probably won't. Boswell doesn't kick 3 days before a game, and the Steelers don't release his practice schedule. It's whatever he wants to do. So it's kind of that thing, you've earned it. Aaron Rodgers is going to play as little or as much as the Steelers decide, and it's going to be a very small amount. Yeah. And then he's going to play as much as he's able to, which we'll see how much that is.
Yeah. The other thing he did was he kind of put in a little bit of a plug to like, okay, hurry up and get TJ done now. In that interview today, he said, once we get our Hall of Fame outside rush backer signed, you're talking about another guy who's a leader, not just by his example, but by his words, said Rodgers about Watt during that interview with McAfee. So he didn't come right out and say sign TJ, but the implication was clear that he's looking for that to get done.
Oh, 100%. And another probably subtext was, hey, look, I didn't take a lot of money. Spend what I didn't take on TJ right now. Right. And if anyone in the Steelers front office needs to move on like $3 to $5 million you don't want to give him the money.
Right.
The last bit, last thing we got to get over before everyone's there. I mean, goodness, we got Elliott in the building and all this. Let's get TJ in.
Yeah, let's get it done. Well, I got one last Aaron Rodgers comment, and this will fall under our drunk uncle category. Zach, if you can hit us off with that.
I absolutely can. And I'd like to thank Honey for providing the music and all this for all of the little graphics we have.
So this week's drunk uncle text comes from Recall Karen Bass, who said, quote, y'all missed out on a generational player like Sanders. That would be Shador, if you're not sure. For someone like Rodgers, spelled wrong, who's going to do just good enough to where you don't get a high enough pick for a top quarterback, then dip. Mike Tomlin about to get fired.
Well, someone's listening to too much Ramon Foster. We'll get to why that is, but goodness,
he's a Filipponi fan or something. I don't know. Or Mark Madden or something. I don't really get that. I don't think that there's any chance that Mike Tomlin's getting fired. And look, maybe Shador Sanders will end up being a generational talent. Maybe Rodgers won't do well for the Steelers, but I don't think that all converges together on us missing out on a generational talent to take Rodgers. We got Rodgers for next to nothing. If we wanted Shador, we could have had him. And I forget who it was that said it the other day. Maybe Ray Fittipaldo in an interview was asked about Shador's. He said they didn't even have numbers on Shador. You know what I mean? Draft information on him for the first 5 rounds. He wasn't even someone that they were remotely considering. Oh my goodness, that's so cute. Wasn't even someone they were remotely considering for the team. So they weren't interested in him for whatever the reason is, right? I don't want to read into that, but for whatever the reason is, they weren't interested.
And your generational talent is currently having a lot of trouble beating out Kenny Pickett, a 97-year-old Joe Flacco, and can't stop going 110 miles an hour.
Right.
So the dude, nothing good that I'm hearing about this. So that's your generational talent.
Imagine if we had Shador Sanders on the team and he got a speeding ticket for 110 miles an hour, it would be immediately the Mike Tomlin can't control his players narrative that we would all have to listen to. Like Mike Tomlin has control over what players are doing in their cars.
Exactly. And apparently this is what happens for like one day, because Deion Sanders, for everyone who doesn't know, he's not doing well. There's some health stuff. He's been away for a bit. So all that you need is your dad not to be around you for a week. And this is what happened. This is why, and I'm not extrapolating like all the way into the future. Who knows what is going to happen? I mean, Ben turned it around. We know all, but right now it's very, very apparent why we didn't go anywhere near him.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought the whole thing was ridiculous. So the other thing that kind of popped up was Adam Schefter said that the Steelers had checked in on Jalen Ramsey and as a possible candidate. Schefter said, I think Pittsburgh checked in. I'm not so sure that Pittsburgh's going to be the destination. In fact, if I had to guess, I would say Pittsburgh would not be the likely destination. I think when you're trying to figure out a home for Jalen Ramsey, 2 teams that make sense, and we'll see how it plays out, would both be in Los Angeles, the Chargers or the Rams. But in case you're on like the conspiracy theory side of things, I found this alternate tweet for you where he was training at UCLA Field, which is where Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf trained earlier. Not to mention numerous players from the Steelers have followed him on Instagram. So if you want to be in that alternate reality where you spotted him at the airport, I'm giving you the tweet for your ammunition. Jalen Ramsey to the Steelers.
And if he comes to the Steelers, he's going to come as a very specific type of player. We need a nickel cornerback badly because of how often we play. So I'll say this: if Jalen Ramsey does come, and I don't think he will, it's going to be a very interesting signal that there's a possibility that who this team's identity is for this year is shifting, because that would be a veteran who right now has no business coming here. He's old. He's what, 30, 31. And if he does, that means that the veterans are starting to sniff around Pittsburgh going, okay, people are coming to Pitt. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm saying if it does, that's the signal it'll send to me. And then maybe others will follow. So, because you only need that domino. But I'll be honest and realistic. They shouldn't, because Steelers, it's not that team this year. So,
and I just don't think he makes a lot of sense right now. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. I think he'd still be a little bit too expensive for what we really need to do, and I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. The other thing that popped up this week is, Chris Olave once again popping up as a possible coming to the Steelers destination. And I thought it was interesting. Mark Cavalli said that, if you were to ask him whether he would want to give, because the number that's being floated about is that the Steelers would have to trade for Olave, so it would be a third-round pick is what people are presuming, right? There's no actual offer. So people are assuming they'd have to give up a third-round pick. He said he would rather spend a little bit of money on an Amari Cooper, 1 year, $3 million, or a similar deal for a Keenan Allen, rather than waste a third-round draft pick on Chris Olave. So I'm asking you guys, what would you rather have? Third-round pick for Chris Olave, 1 year, $3 million, Amari Cooper, or Keenan Allen?
I'm a big fan of the Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen thing. And it seems like we're looking, we have the young players that we want on the team. We're not looking to get younger via a trade or all that, which is why I think Olave is going to be out of the picture. Number one, everyone touted the 24-year-old because he is only 24. But my goodness, those tires have a lot of tread and a lot of nails and screws, and there's a spare on one side. Olave's beat up. So I've always been a fan of Keenan Allen. He is one of the sneakiest good receivers you're going to see, because just looking at him, he just looks like he should probably be an estate agent somewhere. But he's playing football and he does it really well. But those are the kind of guys I think we should get. Amari Cooper would be fascinating if he comes here, because Amari Cooper, sturdy is a word I would use about Amari Cooper. I think he would be a sturdy guy, maybe catch 30 footballs and have a fun season. I all the way back to the other podcast we were on, I will use this one term because he was a crucial part in helping the Steelers get to the Super Bowl, is a Cedric Wilson kind of player. That kind of wide receiver is crucial in getting the Steelers where they have been. Robert Woods is not that kind of player. Van Jefferson wasn't all that. Amari Cooper would be.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of giving up a third-round draft pick. I mean, if we're looking, potentially to bundle a big package together to move up to get a quarterback or something like that, I don't know with all of the injuries that really makes sense. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. The other one that came up today, and I thought this was interesting, was once again, Mike Hilton is being bounced around as somebody who could potentially come back for a reunion with the Steelers. What say you?
I wouldn't have the kind of problems I did when they brought Sutton back, mainly because Sutton was one of those things that it was weird. It matched what 2024 was. It matched all the weird Steeler energy there. But Mike Hilton would be getting that kind of a decision right, because I see him, who we bring him in, sign him for a very small amount because he went somewhere else and did not do well at what they asked him to do to the extent that they asked him to do it. He could do better at what he's good at in Pittsburgh. Little homecoming would be fun. So I wouldn't mind it. And as long as it's not anything close to expensive, which expensive for Mike Hilton is a sliding scale. Because right now I want every bit of money we have going to TJ. Everything we spend on a Ramsey or an Olave, we can't spend on TJ. So spend on TJ and then wouldn't mind that at all.
Yeah, but with the right deal, I don't hate that idea. I mean, he's 31, and like you said, definite decline after he left Pittsburgh. So, if he thinks he's coming back to relive his glory years, I think he's sorely mistaken. But I think as far as like a body that knows the system and the team and the coaches and some of those things, I don't think it's a terrible one. The other one I wanted to bring up was Chris Carter posted this about Zach Frazier, that out of the 21 centers who played at least 1,000 snaps last season, Zach Frazier allowed the second fewest pressures, only behind Creed Humphrey. And that's not enough, he said, for the WVU captain. He is looking to improve upon that number. I thought that was pretty outstanding for a rookie center who kind of got thrown to the wolves on a banged up offensive line with weird quarterback stuff and offensive play calling. I thought that was pretty impressive.
Exactly. And when we get to the offensive line part, which is going to be such a fun, I guarantee we might have to break it up into a couple. It's going to be so fun.
Seriously.
But Zach Frazier is someone who is going to be looked to early for leadership. I guarantee there's already been conversation between him and Sayamalo where Sayamalo is saying, you're the guy already. You might not realize it, but they're already looking to you. Yeah. And we're going to need a pouncy like jump from him this year. Yeah. And I am not worried at all because I was excited when we drafted him. I was excited the more I saw of him. And then there was just even the plays where it looked like he was a little off. The next play, he would just do twice as well. So loved every bit of it. And I love that he wants to get better. Yeah. So love this kid. Really.
Yeah, I love it too. I'm excited about it. I like him a lot. I think he's done a great job. I think I mentioned this once before that like Craig Wolfley had said, before he passed, that he sees him as this like natural leader of this offense, headed there very early in his career. He's just that kind of guy. He was a leader at West Virginia. He expects him to be a leader in Pittsburgh, and I think that's outstanding. All right, I got one more topic for us before we transition into our next segment. And I think this is interesting. Zach sent me this earlier, and I just had to bring it up on the show to see what people think. Ramon Foster said that the 5 hottest seats in the NFL, so coaches that are in the hot seat, and names Mike Tomlin is number 4, Brian Daboll 1, Kevin Stefanski 2, Zach Taylor 3, Tomlin 4, Brian Callahan 5. And Zach and I talked before the show a little bit about the definition of what being in the hot seat means. And from my perspective, that means that you're saying that somebody is close to getting fired, like their job is in jeopardy, right? You're in the hot seat, you're in trouble. But you said you heard Ramon give a slightly different take on it.
Yeah, apparently. And I think whenever we talked, I misspoke a little bit. He still does see the term hot seat, meaning that the person's job is in jeopardy. Okay. But he defined a coach on the hot seat as somebody who has gotten consistently embarrassing and many difficult questions. But he didn't really expand on that, not even in general. So I'm confused on that because to me, every single coach at every single press conference is going to get at least one difficult or embarrassing question or something. And is he referring to Tomlin walking out on the Buffalo Bills conference? The first question he was asked, because I don't know what he's referring to about this, but I got to say, you look on that. Well, I think he's just taken some anger on the AFC North. There's 3 AFC North coaches on that. So apparently a whole bunch of turnovers going on.
Not on it is Harbaugh, who can't seem to get over the hump with what is arguably the best team in the NFL year after year. So I find that a little interesting. And look, I know Ravens fans aren't real happy with him. You know what I mean? The Ravens fans, a lot of them that I talk to feel about him like we feel, or a lot of Steelers fans, not me. A lot of Steelers fans feel about Tomlin. They're frustrated with him. So I thought that was interesting that, look, the Browns definitely deserve to be up there. Maybe even the Bengals. I personally think the Bengals' problems are not necessarily coaching, they're personnel issues. You know what I mean? You have to have players, but.
I agree. It's just weird. And I agree with Brian Daboll, 100%. New York Giants are just a dumpster fire. I wish that Trey Essex talked in more detail, or Ramon Foster talked in more detail about this, because a lot of for anyone who doesn't know, Ramon Foster works for the Tennessee Titans organization, does a lot of podcasting. And I would say like
Used to play for the
85%
Steelers.
of that. He what?
Used to play for the Steelers. Was an offensive lineman
Yeah.
for the Steelers.
Yep. But just lost my train of thought with that. But Ramon Foster with this, gone. So
You're saying that you wished he'd given more detail about it, that he'd gone into more depth about what he was thinking about it.
Yeah, and because there was no real sense to any of this because he had Brian Callahan on there. Brian Callahan's only had 1 year with like a number 1 overall guy in Caleb Williams, who's supposed to be transformative. Why on earth is that? I wish he would have talked more about it rather than just talking about the Titans around this subject.
That's a really good point, because if you think about that, if Callahan's got, you said 1 year, right? So Callahan's got a year. So how many long and prolonged and protracted difficult question and answer sessions could he have had with the media about one team in 1 year, right? You're talking about Tomlin. I guess you could say that since, maybe 2020, right? Tomlin's been getting a lot of difficult questions about why the team can't win in the postseason, and a lot of frustration. We haven't won a playoff game since the 2016 season. So maybe since then you could say that. But again, I don't know. I'm surprised to hear it from Ramon, because I think anybody who's familiar with the Steelers organization or knows the Steelers will confidently say that in no way is Mike Tomlin in trouble with the Rooney family to the level where he might be getting pushed out the door. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. If you're watching this now or you're watching this later, do us a favor and chime in and tell us what you think it means.
And I have to do a quick self-edit because I glanced over it too quickly. Brian Callahan wasn't coaching the Bears. It actually makes less sense than that. He is the head coach of the Titans, who just drafted Cam Ward. So apparently he's saying that head coaches get no time with their number 1 draft picks. So it doesn't make sense. None of that.
When you haven't even done it. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird, and look, I think there's coaches all over the league that, it's valid that they're in the hot seat. You know what I mean? And people wondering what they're doing. I mean, but I don't know. I don't see Tomlin in the top 5. I just don't see him in the top 5. Do I think there's questions? Do I think that if we had another tough year this year, there'd be questions? Sure. But I don't think those questions equal his seat being hot.
And the fact that it was Ramon Foster is what makes this strange, because I would expect this from sources that don't know the Steelers or all that. If you've been in the Steelers organization, you know for a fact Mike not getting fired. If Mike Tomlin is leaving, it will be of his own accord, and he will magically grow wings and fly into the air. That's how it will happen one day. But it's not going to get fired.
Trying to pretend he's a member of the national media now and just say wacky things about Mike Tomlin so he fits in.
Well, I do remember like the year Jerome Bettis retired and he just decided to spend the whole year bashing the Steelers running game. So weird things happen the first year when I don't know what that is.
Yeah, who knows? Well, let's transition to our last segment. Every week we've been talking about, the past couple of weeks, talking about different positional groups on the team, kind of what the state of the union, if you will, of that position is, how we feel like they look going into the season, talking about the changes they maybe made over the offseason, and if there's, what we're kind of expecting to see from them in training camp and as the season begins. And we're going to cover today, talk about the inside linebackers today. Zach, what are your thoughts about our inside linebackers room?
While we're trying to spread these position groups out and save some for this is a sneakily exciting position group, and it's not just because of this year; it's because of what's built up to this year. Because if you go back 3 years, it was all about, okay, we're going to tear it all down, we're going to rebuild it all, we're going to bring in. We had Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts and Quan Alexander and all these people. And then just the most random rash of injuries that specifically target our inside linebackers just wrecked it. And then 2024 came around and we invested a lot in Patrick Queen. Cole Holcomb missed the entire year. Peyton Wilson did really good, but he was young. So this year, a lot is riding on everything finally getting to a stable point here. And the problem is when I look at this, and we'll get into a lot of other parts of the inside linebacker group, I get more and more concerned that we were chasing the Ryan Shazier of it all, because that was such a big blow to the franchise that it seems we've been from Devin Bush to I forget, number 41, who made the really, really good hit on Derrick Henry and then went to the Raiders. Why am I forgetting his name? The middle linebacker. That guy. I'll remember in a second. But
Robert,
what was it?
isn't it Robert something?
Robert Spillane. Thank you.
Oh, there we go. I
Yeah,
knew it was
yeah,
Robert. I couldn't come up with the last name.
So we've been trying like lunch pail journeyman and all this, and when we threw that much at Patrick Queen, and even he admitted this week, there was an article written that he didn't live up to what he held himself to, considering the money that we paid him. A lot is riding on this year kind of getting over that hump. And something that I was really surprised with, this is one of the few positions that didn't get a knee-jerk Ravens playoff loss overhaul, because a lot of things did, except for one area. If you guys do not know the name Scott McCurley, I really, really hope that you know it in a positive way by the end of the year. He is our new specifically inside linebackers coach. For anybody in the chat, if you know, I don't know if we had specifically an inside linebackers coach before, if it was just linebacker. I'm hoping it was just linebacker and we expanded to a specification. But that is a positive kind of turnover, because I would prefer personnel turnover to player turnover. But I'm curious about Leanne. Where's your confidence level knowing that? I feel like we got a random wild card because no one was really sure about where Holcomb was going to be, and he seems fully primed and ready to go. That's another really big piece that we get back. So where's your confidence level regarding this group?
It's pretty high, actually. I know that people felt like Queen was a little bit of a letdown last year. I'm going to go back to kind of maintaining the stuff I said last season, which is that it's his first year in a defense that was having some issues, right? Not all his fault. You know what I mean? And do I think he could have performed better? Yes. I'm not absolving him of any issues, but I do think that there was other issues there, and I think we saw the ripple effect from Cam Sutton, frankly, spread throughout that defense once he returned, and I think it created some problems. I think there was other issues before that kind of getting themselves together, and so I do feel a lot more confident. He talked about it. We wants to get 6 interceptions this year. I think that's a little bit of a stretch considering he had 7 passes defended last year. But I mean, I would certainly like to see him get 2 or 3, would be a big step forward, I think. And I think he has the potential to do that. And so I hope that this unit, without Sutton, without some of the other issues they were having, comes together as a more cohesive unit. We talked about that last week a little bit, that, about the communication issues and, and some of the guys talking about how, you have to be here and do your job or get off the field. I think it was Minka that said it, but yeah, my confidence much higher.
I like that. And a big thing I don't think we're going to see, and I hope we don't see, is while we may have enjoyed the little back and forth between Patrick Queen, the other Ravens, like, oh, grass is greener, water in the lawn, or all that, I think that was the distraction. I think that got in Queen's head, that and the Roquan Smith effect, where am I good enough to be this guy on my own? I don't need Smith next to me. For anyone who doesn't know, Roquan Smith was the guy next to Patrick Queen when he was in Baltimore. And a lot of people said that's what made Patrick Queen good. Kind of like a Bud Dupree kind of a situation. So 1 year removed from that,
like all those things come together, right? So like when you have like one thing happen in your life that's stressful, you can handle it, right? Like no problem, right? It might suck, but you can handle it. But then something else happens, and then something else happens, and then something else happens, and all of a sudden it's like you can't. At least for me, I don't want to speak for other people, but at least for me, it feels like your brain is overwhelmed. You know what I mean? It's all these things that are happening, and you're doubting yourself and second guessing yourself. And so I do wonder if some of that the banter and stuff is fun, but I do wonder that if at some point, he's struggling a little bit and then you're getting all these chirps from Baltimore, does that start to get in your head a little bit? And hey, if it did, then, more power to him for being successful with that. But you got to learn to like block that stuff out and move forward.
Oh, you really do. The only concern I have is who is going to fill the Landon Roberts shaped hole on this defense, because that guy was and I love this word. He was the definition of word stalwart. He was that guy that you needed to stand up that big running back on 3rd and 1 or something.
Yeah.
And while I love, for anyone wondering, that is my brother Lakota Tanner, who was a guest last week.
Right.
But Peyton Wilson is a speedy, really, really good guy that can hit hard if he got some run up. But Landon Roberts is a guy who could do a full on tackle from a standing position without having to move. And I'll be just honest, right now, training camp will prove otherwise, hopefully. I'm looking at this, and we need Cole Holcomb to be fully healthy. He's
Yeah.
the only guy on our roster that, not just physically, but the energy he brings, that can fill that Landon Roberts gap. Because if people don't remember that 2023 season when all of our linebackers were injured, Atlanta Roberts had like half an arm and he was limping, and dude did not
So
leave
bad.
the field for us. So
Yeah.
he's on the Raiders now. I wish him well and all this, but we need that guy. And I was a Cole Holcomb fan the second we signed him from Washington.
Me
It
too.
devastated me that for like I think a year, the only picture you could find if you wanted to search was him on the cart with his head down. So he
No.
wants to change that narrative, and I want him to change that.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this. This is a really, and we haven't even talked about the dark horse and all this, which is Malik Harrison, the other
Oh yeah.
Ravens guy that we signed and threw $10 million at, despite the fact he had never started a game at the position we had signed him for.
Yeah.
And for a
They
really
like
interesting
him.
thing. Yeah,
I'm
sure.
kind of hoping. Look, there is somebody has to step up and fill the Landon Roberts hole, right? And that is a big hole to fill. I thought that, I thought he was kind of one of those, not the flashiest guy on your team necessarily. Do you know what I mean? But he was like so consistent, so reliable, and so steady. You could just always count on him, and I think that's huge. So I do agree with that. But I also hope that what they do differently this year is build this defense so that it makes sense for the players that we have. Like I felt like last year we had this defense and we were trying to plug guys into it where they didn't necessarily fit, freaking Cam Sutton I just keep harping on him. It was such a poor choice. And I think even like Beanie Bishop in some ways, I think then it forces Minka to be out of position. I think it forces Patrick Queen to get used in ways that don't make the most sense for him. I think it diminishes the effectiveness of the outside linebackers because they're picking up slack. And so I just think all of those things kind of pile up on top of each other and create problems. So I'm hoping that what we see a little bit more of this year is a defense that makes sense for the players that we have and is built to their strengths, because there's a lot of strengths and a lot of talent.
Oh, there is. And what I like is it's not just those are two really good top 4 guys. And let's be clear, you just play a lot of nickel. We're going to rely on defensive backs to work in tandem with maybe only one inside linebacker on the field at certain times. So having the 4 of Queen, Holcomb, Wilson, and Harrison is nice, but you need the other guys, the special team guys, the depth guys. So the names Devin Harper and Carson Bruner, if they make the team, it's going to be because they are ready to stick their nose on that grindstone and play special teams as often as they have to. And if you knew Carson Bruner's dad, Mark Bruner, if he is anything like his dad, he is ready to work and get no glory for it.
I feel like there's a lot of like really hungry players this year. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe it's early. Maybe this is just preseason. Maybe this is just my excitement. We need to wait till training camp. But it does feel to me like the players this year feel very hungry. They want it. They feel aggressive, like coming out of the gate like they're chomping at the bit. And I hope all of that transitions over into camp and creates an atmosphere of competitiveness and productivity that we haven't necessarily seen.
That's very true. And this inside linebacker group, whether it's said in these specific words or not, or by McCurley or by Tomlin, or whoever, he's going to let him know, guys, you're pretty much the same unit that you were last year with a couple additions, and you better prove us right for making those decisions.
Yeah.
Because they could have easily gone out and spent a couple more on this, or, traded away Queen as a knee-jerk reaction, or they could because the overhaul the Steelers have done in quarterback rooms and all that, they've done it. So I'm really hoping that they take it seriously, because while I'm not fully on board with the amount of knee-jerk reaction to the Baltimore Ravens playoff loss this has gone on, I genuinely believe the Steelers have just said, listen, if you're going to beat us, it's not going to be the wow way. You are not going to run down our throats like that again. And if you're going to beat us, find some other way.
You can't be the Steelers with that defense and talk every year about your defense and then allow other teams to just run all over your backside like that. So out of this inside linebacker group, Zach, who are you most interested to see in training camp and kind of have your eye on?
Well, number one is a little obvious for Cole Holcomb. I need to see lateral. I've gone through a full ACL reconstruction, so I know how not just scary, but how crucial that first little bit is. And I had to see lateral movement. I had to see him take a hit and then hit. But what I'm looking for, I want to see why we signed Malik Harrison. I don't know a lot about him. I've watched tape, but because I'm an amateur when it comes to that, as much as I have watched it, I don't know the standout things that made the Steelers say we want him. So in training camp and preseason, I want to prove why you're going to be in that upper rotation of guys and not one of the bubble guys. So I'm really curious, because I know what Peyton Wilson brings. It's kind of like a Nick Herbig thing. For some reason, I don't need to see more. I know what you're going to bring. I know you're working. Patrick Queen and Cole, I know all that. The other guys are going to have to work to make me remember their names. To be as weird as that sounds, you got to earn that right in my head. But Malik Harrison, I don't really know you, buddy, and I would really like to have that extra guy. Like when Nick Herbig was as good as he was, we're like, oh, this is an extra guy we didn't know we had. I want Harrison to be that guy.
Well, that's what you're going to hope for, right? Like we had this with the outside linebacker room last year, like this embarrassment of riches. And if you look at this group on paper, it feels that way, right? It feels like this embarrassment of riches. These players we have, if they really all perform at the level that they should, I just think that that's huge. And so, yeah, I think for me, I'm going to be kind of watching, like you said, Cole Holcomb, of course, because man, fingers crossed for that guy. Just so much want him to do well, but also to see how they kind of come together as a unit and what they look like, especially when we get on to the preseason games, like what that looks like. And I feel like this is a big year for Patrick Queen. I feel like he's got to prove that he's not that guy that has to be with Roquan, right? He's got to prove that he can do it. He said he could. He showed that he had the talent at times, and he's got to step up this year, and he's got to do it, because it is an ugly road in the NFL. Just ask Devin Bush if you cannot produce at the level at which you promised you could, and I worry that he'll be headed down that track, where people are losing interest in him if he can't get it together this year.
Absolutely. And this is a huge credit and testament to what the Steelers are and who they are as a franchise and how they treat their players. Not because you think back to Ryan Shazier, how long we kept him on the roster, how long all that. Think about the guys that have gotten injured, didn't play the first year. Either we drafted them, or you have Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin and Corey Trice, Cole Holcomb here, guys who we said, you're injured now. Yeah. We know, and Corey Trice stepped up last year. Calvin Austin stepped up. We're hoping for Roman Wilson. So I genuinely believe that, because, and that matters to a player. That matters when a team says, listen, I know you're injured. We got you, bud. Just do your thing. You'll be back next year. No time has passed. Cole Holcomb.
It's got to matter, right? It's got to matter. It's got to make you so motivated if you're Cole Holcomb.
It doesn't. I have to admit, with the team in general, I think my hopes are pretty realistic. with Cole Holcomb, my hopes are really, really high. I have I let go of the balloon and all that. I am so excited because he's like, if I created a middle linebacker in Madden, it would look like Zach Banner.
I know.
Yeah,
it would Banner.
But it all matters about how you bounce back. And good, I like that you brought up Devin Bush because that first year you were quick, you were alive, you did all that thing, and you couldn't bounce back after the kind of injury you had. So whether it's Roman Wilson or whether it's Cole Holcomb, we need to see how they bounce back from that. But the more I looked into the inside linebacker group for this episode, the more I realized I'm legitimately excited for the group. I thought it was just going to be let's go and see which guy. No, every single one got me hyped up. So very excited. And I feel like they're the kind of group that are ready to, and I used the term earlier, to be that lunch pail kind of group who go to work and don't really need the kind of fanfare. Other people can get it. They're ready to go to work and everyone get 100 tackles. Let's go home.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Zach, any final thoughts before we shut it down tonight? Oh, look at this. We got Relic's awesome comment. That was so much of a refreshing experience, not so much negativity as the others I've seen. Oh, love you.
Thank you. We try to blend. We'll never say something just because we want to think of things as rainbows and sunshine, but we'll be realistic. But how do you watch games and you're that negative that I've seen out there?
Fun. I keep telling people this is supposed to be fun, right? So it doesn't mean that there's not reason to be frustrated. I'm frustrated. Zach's frustrated, right? Things frustrate us, but oh my goodness. I mean, this is supposed to be something you enjoy. So I'm not naming names, but if you just want to get on here and complain and be angry the whole time, I don't know. It doesn't seem fun to me.
It doesn't.
Watch the show tonight. We really appreciate you. Do us a favor, like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Follow us and the podcast on X. And please do us a favor. Drop us a comment in the comment section if you're catching the show after the fact. We covered a lot of ground tonight about all the stuff that Aaron Rodgers said, about Mike Tomlin potentially being on the hot seat. Let us know what you think of all the things we talked about. We're curious to hear about your opinions. We will be back next Tuesday with our next episode. Once again, Leanne will be rolling into the week saying we won't have anything to talk about, and surely there'll be stuff. Thank you so much. Zach, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Everyone have a wonderful night.
Leanne and Zach would like to thank you for tuning in to the Steel City Huddle podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss a thing.